that I did most of this modification is because I wanted to use a regulator, pressure regulator with this gun, and I bought this Altaros regulator, which is very good regulator, very precise. And after installing it, I was quite disappointed. The shot count was very low, and also the power was low. It was just, I didn't see any point in it because I didn't get, even the accuracy wasn't that much bigger. And after this modification, I got to a point when I really significantly rise up the shot count and also the power. But in the end, because I'm kind of a guy that also likes to have a lot of power, and I have 2 cylinders, I also realized that those modifications were also good for the unregulated rifle. Now the reason that most people are having, including me, having so much problem with putting in a regulator in the rifle and not getting good results is because this rifle was made to be tuned up and not down. So it's made for unregulated cylinders, and it does not perform well when you put in a regulator. There are quite a few modifications I did. I'm going to go through all of them, but I'm going to also tell you which one is, I don't know, shot count related, which one is accuracy related, or which one is absolutely not necessary, but I just did it because, I don't know, I liked it or whatever, the aesthetics and so on. So the most important thing is to make a lighter hammer. The hammer is too heavy, and for that reason the valve, especially when you put in the regulator, stays open for too long. So it stays open as long as the pellet travels through the barrel. And of course, in the end, you get some gushing air out of the barrel, which doesn't contribute to velocity. It only empties your cylinders a little faster. That is why I drill a lot of holes. Hopefully you can see this. A lot of holes in everywhere actually I could. And also I made it a little thinner. So I took some material off here. And I also believe in this case, in this side, and I took out all of this except for the part that is actually used for the trigger part that it's holding the hammer back, so the sear that is trapping the hammer when you cock the rifle. At the beginning, the weight was approximately 90 grams, which is way too much. For example, Shingsong Carrera Ultra has a 90-gram hammer, and it's a 9mm gun. This is 635 or .25 caliber, and it was way too much. So right now it's about, I think, 60 grams. Just let me check. So I took off approximately a third of its weight. So yes, it's 62.4 grams. And you can also notice that this part was brass before, and now it's plastic. So I really took everything off that I could. I didn't drill a hole over here, and I don't recommend you do that, because over here the anti-bouncing rod is the hammer hits in the anti-bouncing rod. So if I put a hole in there, it might break off. So this is the most important part. The second most important part, I'm talking about the shot count now, is to make this a little longer and put in a stronger spring. So this is the anti-bouncing device, and before the anti-bouncing device works so the hammer travels forward towards the valve, and when it hits the valve, it bounces off it, and sometimes it bounces so far back that after it's going towards the valve again, it reopens the valve the second time and the third time, and etc. etc. So it uses a lot more air than it actually has to. So if you make this a little longer, that means that Just let me get this in the right place, so it's turned like this. So after it hits the hammer, it has to trap the hammer at as soon as possible, so it doesn't get too far back, because if it gets a little further back, it has enough force to strike the hammer, the valve again, and reopen it, and of course use air at the time when you don't want to. So this is the most. Those two modifications are the most important in order to get a higher shot count. Okay, so moving on. Let's talk a little about velocity and power. One thing you can do to increase power is to make a bigger transfer port. This is not important for the shot count. This is just to have more efficiency regarding pressure. So you can have lower pressure and still get quite high velocities. So before I think it was like 4.5 millimeters, and now it's 6 millimeters. That's for 25 caliber. If you have 22 caliber or 177, of course you don't have to make such a big transfer port, but it does help regarding pressure efficiency. I also did a modification here which is not relevant to anything, just to make the cocking easier. I put a bearing on the top of this rod. So this rod actually goes back and it cocks the hammer. And over here this was just steel. There was no bearing on the top. And of course when you cock the gun, this steel would press up against this brass, and you will cock the hammer back. And now that there is a bearing on that steel rod, there is a lot less friction, and it's easier to cock. Of course, when you make a bigger transfer port, you also have to make the bigger hole in the barrel. And also the whole way through through this piece, not only the transfer port itself, but also through here. You might need to use a different set of O-rings after you do this to get a good seal. Okay, so this is for the power, and also there's another big improvement regarding the power. Now this is not an important modification regarding accuracy, only efficiency and power. This is a stock valve assembly. So the valve goes back through here and sticks out of here. You can see over here I have the installed valve. So the hammer hits here and opens the valve. And the stock one has this ring around it and a lot of holes. And these holes, of course, have a certain air capacity, which is not wanted in regards to efficiency. You get a lower efficiency if you have a big chamber before the pellet. After the valve and before the pellet. And this is, let's say, regarding efficiency, this is like you would have a bigger caliber, because bigger caliber, bigger barrel has bigger volume for air. That's why you need more air. And over here you lose because you have a lot of air here, and this air doesn't do any good to you regarding accuracy or power. So I made a complete new assembly from brass. I also made this hole a lot wider, so there's more space. So this is especially important when you are using regulator, because the regulator sits over like this. And of course you want the chamber of regulated air, which is this hole in here, as big as possible. And if you don't have a lot of space here, you only have the space that it's so the volume that is in the valve, the regulator. And once you widen this, you get like plus 1/3 of the capacity of the regulator itself. And I only made one hole from where it goes to transfer port. It doesn't want to focus. Just a second. It's a little better now. Okay. So only one hole, and the dimension is exactly the same as the transfer port. So it's 6 mm. And also I put O-rings right beside this hole, and not here, because I also don't want any air to go over here. I basically want all the air to go to the transfer port and nowhere else. Okay. Now the next, not really modification, but just a change in springs, valve spring. This is the stock valve spring, and this is the one I use for when I use the rifle as a regulated rifle, so with Altaros regulator. This one is much stronger, and the reason why you have to use a much stronger spring is because regulator works like this. Once the shot has been taken, it almost empties this cylinder, which is where is the regulated pressure is, and then slowly it recharges to the pressure you have it set on the regulator. And because right after the shot the pressure is very low, there is a lot less force on the valve to close itself. You don't have this problem when you have an unregulated rifle, because the pressure is always high behind the valve, and this high pressure closes the valve very fast. So if you are using with the gun without a regulator, you can use the stock spring. It's perfectly okay. But if you use the gun with a regulator, then it's highly recommended that you use a stronger spring. Again, I hope this will focus in my hands. Okay, this is it. So this is very stiff spring. Okay, so we've gone through regulator, hammer. I also did some work on the trigger, but this is not relevant to anything, just to make it a little lighter, even though the Hudson by default has a very good trigger. Okay, yes, another port. Another modification that has to do with efficiency and actually more power, so velocity. This is a 22 original, so stock pellet probe. Here we go. As you can see, the point of this probe is very thick, and because of this, there's very little room around it for the air to flow, and it kind of makes the same effect as a small transfer port. And this pin is actually good if it's as thin as possible. Of course, you must not make it too thin, because it will break off. This is brass, so you have to make it at least thick enough not to damage, so not damage when you fire the gun or when you cock and load the pellet inside. So I made this. I actually also made it too thin, so it got broken up the first time I fired the rifle, and then I inserted in a steel pin, which is, I believe, like 1.5 millimeters, 2 millimeters thick, so very thin. And this allows more air so the easier flow of the air, and therefore higher velocities with smaller pressures. And you want the regulator to be set at the smallest pressure possible, because the smaller the pressure, the more accurate the gun is for a few reasons. For one, you can have the hammer spring a lot lighter, and therefore create less stress, less shaking to the gun prior to the exit of the pellet through the barrel. And the second is just a general stress on the rifle. So, and also third, of course, has to do with efficiency. The lower the pressure is set, the more shot count you get, because you have to the pressure in the bigger part of the cylinder, so unregulated side of the cylinder, has to drop a lot lower to get to the point where your regulator is set. So of course that means more shots. Right now I have it set to 130 bars, although it looks more, but due to so according to my tests, this is 130 bars. Okay, so now we are at, just let me check. Okay, so the muzzle brake, this is purely accuracy. This doesn't have to do anything with efficiency. I made a new muzzle brake, just straight muzzle brake, because Hudson makes like you would use an, I don't know, a very poorly sharpened drill and just drill it in. So it doesn't look even good, and it definitely doesn't shoot good. And this will improve your accuracy very much. And this is actually a stock, so Hudson's barrel. This is not Lothar Walther barrels, because Hudson also offers BT65s with Walther barrels. And in my opinion, barrel is just, I won't say just as good, but it's definitely more than good enough for the gun. So you don't have to have Walther's barrel to get good accuracy. You also only need to make a good and new muzzle brake. And this was blued after, that's why it's not seen that it's any work has been done to it. And there's another thing with the gun. You get this muzzle brake end cap, which I don't recommend that you use, because it's sort of like you would put a tube at the end of the muzzle, and that means that what you did is when the pellet exits the barrel, it's still not away from the air, so high pressure air that was behind them in the barrel. Because you probably heard of air strippers, and the job of an air stripper is to strip away the air, the high pressured air that was behind the pellet in the barrel, because this air can have a bad influence in the accuracy, because it's like you would, I don't know, throw a ping pong ball and then just blow at it, and of course it would change direction. And instead of this, either you just don't put on here anything, or you put on something like this. This is something I made from brass, so it's again problem with focus. So yeah. So just a piece of brass. It has a thread on one side and nothing on the other, so just hole. And what I do is just put it over the barrel and just thread it on, and it's just a little bit higher than the muzzle of the barrel. So if I accidentally hit on the floor with the barrel, I don't damage the muzzle. That's basically the only purpose, and aesthetics, of course. If you don't have an option to do this, you can also buy Hudson's air stripper. In my experience, the gun is not, it doesn't improve accuracy compared to not having anything or just putting on this end cap. But definitely don't use the end cap that you get with Hudson. This is usually quite a accuracy. You get accuracy issues if you use this one. One thing you can do also to increase velocity, to power, is to make this part of the valve thicker. This way you allow more air to pass through, and also to make this part more straight, not completely straight, but like it is now. That way, as soon as the valve opens, it will open fully and not just partially. And also, I made a new valve seal from plastic. This is some kind of special plastic, I'm not sure what it's called. But I made the hole through it just a little bit smaller. It was 6.5 millimeters before, now it's only 6. And what this does is it actually makes a little easier for the valve to open. And because the valve is easier to open, you can use a weaker hammer spring, or just set it to a little weaker, because you want the hammer spring, you don't want the hammer to make too much stress to the gun when you shoot. So this is one more modification. It's not necessary, but it will improve especially velocities and also accuracy. I think that's it. Yeah, that would be about it. All the modifications I did to this rifle. Of course, I didn't do them all at once. I tried a lot of things before I get to the point where I was satisfied. Yeah, I forgot to mention this part. This is a spring retainer for the valve spring, and I reduce the size and make a lot bigger holes on it so the air can flow through it easier. This is not so important. It makes a little difference in regarding pressure efficiency, so velocity, but it's not that important. So that's it. I will make some pictures of these parts that I customly made, and hopefully you will have less problem after you do this modification with this regulator. I definitely recommend using it. It really brings out shot consistency and accuracy to this gun, because the gun otherwise is very good for its money. It's not that expensive and you get a lot for your money. So this is it. Check out the pictures and have fun.